Hello, this is David Birch at StarPath School of Navigation with an update on Jacob Addaram's row across the Pacific from Seattle to Cairns, Australia. And the blog post, there's a link to a blog post with more information on it about these Google Earth overlays that we have set up. And so the main news is, as before, he's done a fantastic job. We had a real serious concern at one point. That was when the route was coming in along here, and it was aiming literally right straight. No, excuse me. Then this was all doing fine. Then he got pushed up to here, and it was this leg, right, going along here, aimed right at this reef, and that was a concern. And then the wind lightened up a little bit, and then he managed to fight through it and got on this great route here, which he could follow. And let me back up just a minute to show something. That some distance back in here, I had gotten the word from him of what his planned route was, and that was to follow along this yellow line. And then that's coming then clear up here, up to the top, and cutting through the Great Barrier Reef at this point here. We'll come back to this in a moment, into Cairns here. That's the plan. And then what happened was, you see the deviation from the plan. That's like all of this. Bang, bang. So now he's back on. He's also around. This was a hazard down here, two things. That was a concern for a bit in, looking in here. But we're down here almost on track. Now, my guess is he's going to follow along here over to somewhere in this area and start north end here. And this wind is still behind him. And that one piece of news is that the ASCAT's down. And I don't know what the reason is, but there's no ASCAT data available. It looks like they have data in Europe, but the very convenient American presentation of that data is not there now. It was gone yesterday. It ended yesterday. So I've written to them to see if we can get a word on what's going on with that. But let's look here just to get a review of what's going on. Let's just say, here's this track. I just push this button up here, and then go to a path, and you can see that if we just did like a click, click, and you can do this here, this sort of thing, like this, and then on into Cairns here. You see he's about 285 miles out. 285. Clear, close. And then if we come back here and look at what he's been doing, somehow one of these didn't turn red, but the red one's about right in here. And so what he's doing, you see here, this number of miles here is about 29. Then you're going here. Oh wait, I'm still on a path. I want to clear that. So if you click here and then click here, see that's about like 30 miles and so forth. I checked this out a little while ago. This one here is about the full day, and then you go over here. So he's making about 35 miles a day, which is something like 1.4 knots. So if you look at that 280 to go at 1.4 knots, it's something like, if all goes well, 8 days or so. Now, keep in mind, though, that when he turns here and starts north, he's going to be going a lot faster. And as we'll get to in just a moment, he's going to be going really a whole lot faster. And I'll show you that. So we're almost at the point where you can start your bets on, making a pool on what day does he pull into the docks at Cairns. And I'm going to come back to that. Maybe we can offer some kind of contest here at StarPath. There's a chance, and let me just mention this now, there's a chance, I think I had a discussion with him once before, that he might anchor out in here at this bay, when he does get in this far, anchor at this bay and then come down into Cairns the next day. So let's figure that all out and then maybe make a pool and offer some nice prize for the closest winner on that. The other thing new, I don't know what's new. It's always good to update this KML file. There's one other, and you'd think everything's looking great now, and well, it is looking really good. after that one big challenge. But it turns out he's got another challenge ahead of him, another potentially big one. And that is, we've got to look at the wind. And so let me come back. Let me just move this down. I'm going to come back to this in a moment too. Here's the wind. And I just reloaded this model. And then I've got him set up here. You see his boat is at 1.4 knots, and he's following the Emerson approach route, which is this one I showed you on the other chart. And so we can get a meteogram along that. And here, in other words, this is a sophisticated presentation. What it is showing you the wind speed and direction at each day, or every 3 or 4 hours of each day, taking into account that the boat's moving. So the weather pattern's moving and the boat's moving, and this accounts for both of them. So you see here, this is right now. It's the day before Labor Day, Sunday, and it's about right here. And here's the wind. And what happens here, like Thursday or Friday, that wind really picks up again. This is 20, 30, that's 33 knots here. So that's almost a storm. Tropical storm is 34 knots. So, but this is well above 25 again, up at 30, above 30. And that's a problem. That's always a problem, even when the wind's right behind you in a boat like his. And so let's go back to this chart and you see here, let me zoom in a little bit. Move this over. Okay. So here's the boat. Now watch the days go by here. He's coming down. Watch this boat right here is moving as we chase the days. Here's Monday, Labor Day. Then it's coming down, and if everything keeps up as normal, see, and that wind there, 10 knots out of the south, well, here it's, out of the east or southeast is about what he's had. And then somewhere along here he turns north, right? Now he turns north and he goes up here, and this is where it happens. Sometime late Thursday or Friday, these winds are up around 25 knots again. Now, in a sense, that's good. That's a rocket ship ride for him, right straight up there. But watch the rocket here. The rocket gets up here, and it's still now up here at this point. He is still looking at like 20, 30 knots. Now, it's very difficult to turn that boat, beam that wind, turn that boat to the left there. So he is going to have a challenge. He's going to have a challenge. One, it never ends. You see, it doesn't end till it's over, right? So he's right up here, and he's going to have to turn in, go beam this very 25, 30 knot. Sometimes in the forecast there was 30. You see. Now, and so that's what the issue is. So that's so that's what we're watching. That's what we're watching. And now, but look at that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's where the turn was, right? The turn to the strong wind was right here. That's the key factor right there. Is that going to happen the way they say it is? And that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. That's right on, that's beyond, slightly what you would call beyond the edge of really dependable. You can't bank on that. You don't want to change any plans now based on something that's forecasted 5 days from now. That is too far out. 3 days maybe for sure, but not 5 days. But looking ahead here, let's suppose this keeps, this forecast maintains. So he could, now I'm not sure how he's thinking about this. I'm just sort of doing little armchair stuff off on my own sitting here in Ballard. He's out there in his boat rowing there. Got to face the music. But if you come in here on his route, whoa, what did I do here? That's supposed to be at 18.5. Okay, that's 18.5. I have to try to lock that. This is 18.5. That was where he was going to follow along and then turn. Now, if it turns out, if it looks like this wind is going to build up and be that strong that early, then there could be some other things to look at. There is this, and again, this is the Great Barrier Reef, and these are Australian charts, and these are the official Australian charts, but you'll see they're very good. They show you where these things are, and if you had a boat you could control and the wind wasn't a steady 25 knots of wind, like even if you were in a small sailboat, 25 knots of wind, you don't have that much control of what you're doing. So that's the issue. And he has very little control in those strong winds. Especially now he doesn't have a sea anchor or a drogue. He's lost both of those. Kind of a miracle that he could go 300 some days at sea, or I don't know, is it 300? It's over 300 days at sea. And everything is intact. He just lost those the other day. So that's pretty amazing. He had pretty good preparation to be able to do that. But anyway, so my thoughts were, if I were sitting there, the one thing I'd be considering, and he'll have to consider this based on his own knowledge of his boat and the conditions and so forth. But here's his position right now coming in here. He could maybe, and again, this is just, suppose that winds stay real strong. By the time he's over here somewhere, like right in here, he may see that that's going to be blowing 30 knots when he needs to turn left. Then he could consider maybe another route, and that would be cutting under this reef or this reef. And see, this is still when the wind's light. He'll be here before it gets strong, according to them. And he can turn this way. And he maybe could come in here, either above or below here, and come in. And then just have to come back down to this route for this distance. And this is open CPN. That's 30 miles. So that's like 3/4 of a day. Right? And he could even plan that to be in the daylight, and so forth. So there is an option there. There's an option to running up here. This should be perfectly fine if the winds were normal. But if the winds are going to be 20, 30 knots up here when he needs to do this maneuvers here, then there's something else to consider, is maybe do the real hard maneuvers while you've got the wind Then he gets in here and let it build up to 20 knots. Then he'll just take a rocket ship ride right up here to Cairns. Non-stop. So that's another optional route. I don't know what his thinking is. That's just what I'm looking at from here in Ballard. One other thing, let me mention, let's see if I have a Google, not that, this. So here's a web page. I'll have to put a link into it, but I'll put a link for several of them. But there's something nice. This is now what you sometimes call a terminator. This is showing where it's daylight and dark in Australia. I mean, in the world. So this is daylight, this is dark, and this shadow is moving this way, right? So it's still night where he is at the moment. In fact, in Sydney, Australia, it's about like 5:30 a.m. Still dark. It's winter there. It's winter. Don't forget, it's winter. So when this shadow comes over here. So when you have a thing like this, you can always look at that. And I'm going to be posting another blog post about several ways that we watch this, whether or not it's daylight or darkness there, without physically turning to an almanac. So that's the discussion for now. I'll put some links in there in the description.